It was the middle of the summer. I was 10 years old and my younger brother was 7. We were outside playing various games with other kids in our neighborhood, but we finally headed home and the sun went down. Now, maybe once a week, our parents would go out to a different restaurant around town, leaving my brother and I home alone. Most of the time they'd tell us before they went out, but if we were outside playing, sometimes they'd just leave us to our game. When we got back home and no one was there, so we assumed this was the case, confirming this was a note left on the kitchen counter. My brother and I both went to the living room to watch TV, something we usually did before bed. After half an hour, it had gotten completely dark outside. Just then I heard the doorbell ring, followed by knocking. At first I thought it was our parents getting back, but it definitely wasn't normal for them to use the front door, much less not have a key for it. The chances of the garage door opener they had not working and them forgetting a key were extremely low, although I realized it was still possible. So I left the living room and went up to the front door to see who it was. As I approached the door, I heard a man's voice, yellow, that he was selling Girl Scout cookies. I was extremely confused considering the time of day. I look through the people and see a grown man, completely alone, no cookies in hand, and not with his daughter as I was expecting. The man yelled out once more before moving his hand to the door handle. My heart dropped, realizing that we had forgot to lock the door when coming in for the night. The door handle slowly started turning, to which I quickly engaged the deadlock. A clicking sound echoed out. It was too loud. Clearly the man had heard it and now knew someone was inside. I waited a minute before once again looking through the people. The man was now looking through our living room window directly at my younger brother, who was completely unaware to what was going on. Once more as from where he now stood, I could make out a gun holstered on the left side of his waist. I ran back to the living room and closed the blinds. I told my brother we should get some ice cream downstairs in the basement. I needed to get him away from any windows, but I knew that if he knew what was going on, he would freak out. He agreed, and we went downstairs. I silently locked the basement door behind us. We ate our ice cream and eventually I could hear the garage door opening from upstairs, signifying that my parents were back home. Later, when my brother wasn't around, I told them what had happened. They were horrified and understandably called the police. Police inspected the place and one of the first things they noticed was how the front door's lock had clearly been tampered with, basically confirming the man had ill intent and was trying to break in what he had planned to do when he got inside, though I can't say for sure, and neither can police. The man was never identified. To this day, my younger brother doesn't even know this whole event took place. This happened shortly after I turned 15 years old. As a birthday gift, my parents had given me an Xbox. I was even given my own monitor, which allowed me to play it in my room. My room was upstairs, and in the weeks after my birthday, I of course spent a lot of time up there. It was a Saturday night. I was talking in an Xbox party chat with 2 of my school friends. Both of my parents were out of town at a work convention for the weekend, so I was home alone. I had my headphone volume pretty loud, but during a pause in our conversation, I heard a thumping sound come from downstairs. If you've ever been home alone as a kid, you'll know that any abnormal sound gets your mind. Imagining the worst, I turned down the volume and took one headphone off my ear. Nothing happened for the next 5 minutes, but shortly afterward, I heard the same noise again. I told my 2 friends about it this time, and they both encouraged me to go check it out, joking how someone might have broken in. I laughed and agreed to do it during the next break in our game. When that came, I took my headphones off and started walking towards the stairs. I began walking down them, and as I did, I began to hear soft whispering. I was only halfway down, but I completely froze up. I intently listened, trying to make out whether what I was hearing was actually real or not. Eventually, I crouched down to get a look into the living room. There I saw 4 fully grown men, all completely covered in black, silently walking around. I genuinely couldn't process what I was seeing. All I knew is that I had to get back upstairs. I slowly started crawling back up them, and of course, one of the steps let out a loud creaking noise. It echoed throughout the house before returning to silence. There was no way they didn't hear it. Thinking quick, I ran to my room, put on my headset and told my friends to call the police to my house. They sounded confused and now in a serious tone as to what was going on. Just as the bathroom door fully opened, I managed to dive out of the window head first. I landed badly on my neck, but still managed to look back up at the bathroom window. A silhouette stood motionless looking back at me. That's when the backyard door slid open and 3 men came running out towards me. I tried getting up to run, but I couldn't. In time, all 3 of them started grabbing me and pulling me back towards the house, but this would be interrupted by the distant sound of police sirens. The 3 of them stopped. They looked up at each other. They then sprinted to the backyard fence, climbed it, and I never saw them again. A few moments later and the police showed up in the backyard. I told them which way the men had gone, to which a couple of them started off in that direction, while another stayed with me. The only man that was caught that night was the one inside the house. The other 3 that ran were never found. As police were asking me questions, my 2 friends who I was playing Xbox with pulled into the driveway on their bikes. Even to this day, I still routinely thank them for calling the cops, as it likely saved my life. Found left behind in the house were 4 different knives and a couple fully loaded pistols. As a kid, I lived dead in the middle of nowhere. My family owned a farm, and so we lived in a farmhouse, which literally had a dirt road leading up to it. I want to say I was 16 at the time. It was getting close to midnight. On this particular night, I was home alone. I was sitting on our couch in the living room watching a movie with Bear, our family dog, who we'd had for years. He was getting old in age and therefore wasn't the most active dog and could easily sit through a whole movie motionless by my side. It was during one of the quieter parts in the movie when Bear's ear suddenly shot up and his head turned around. I muted the TV. I myself didn't hear anything. Bear stayed completely focused in this one direction. It was towards the house's front door. My first instinct was somebody was at the door, but this just wouldn't make any sense. Considering the house's location, you have to go completely out of your way to get to our house. I don't think we've ever had someone come to our door that we weren't expecting. Like, this stuff just doesn't happen out here. I brushed it off as just an animal and turned the TV's volume back on. Shortly after I did this, Bear started quietly growling, still looking in the same direction. In the time I've known this dog, I'd heard him growl a total of maybe 2 other times. So by this point, I figured whatever was out there, I had to at least go check it out. I grabbed one of our family's many guns and went up to the front door. I opened it and saw nothing. So I walked out. I got maybe 30 yards from the front porch and looked down into the night. Nothing but black emptiness. So I turned back around. I took 1 step back towards the house before I stopped myself. Sitting on the edge of the deck was a man curled up in the fetal position. It looked like he was trying to hide himself. I stood there trying to think of what to do next. I was not about to walk up right next to this guy. So as silently as I could, I went around to the back door. It was unlocked. Because we always left our doors unlocked, that's not something we typically have to worry about way out here. Right as I got inside, I ran back to the front door shut and locked in. I then did the same with all windows and doors around the house. I called the police, and after a full 30 minutes, they finally arrived. They searched around the whole property, but didn't find anything. This was somewhat relieving. A part of me honestly started to think I had just imagined the sighting. After the police left, I ultimately decided to just go to bed. The next morning, I get up and go down to the kitchen to start making breakfast. But when I went to grab a knife to cut some fruit, I couldn't help but notice one of the knives was missing. I stood there, confused. I was sure it was there the night before. I got a bad feeling. I decided to call the police again. 2 officers showed up, and this time I had them search inside the house. I stood outside while they did so. After a few minutes, the 2 officers came back out with an old scrawny-looking man in handcuffs. the man was found under the basement stairs gripping a knife with both hands. It was the knife missing from my kitchen. After a short-lasting struggle, the man was detained. This was the same man that was hiding outside. After giving the whole story to police, they believed that most likely he had simply gotten in through the front door during the time it took me to go around the house and get in through the back door. From what I know, the man said nothing when questioned about what he was doing way out here or what he had planned. But the fact that he grabbed a knife couldn't mean anything good. I still think about what would have happened had the man searched any more of the house that night and possibly found me sleeping.